meeting to order. This is December 12th, 2022 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Okay, first we have to approve the agenda. Any comments or anything on the agenda? Can I get a motion to?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next item is the minutes of the November 14th meeting. Any corrections? I have some, and I don't know if it makes any difference, but it makes a difference to me if I'm going to look at it. Laura, you do a really good job of the minutes. Let's see, it's on the fourth page. The paragraph starts with me talking about the National Register submission. And the next sentence it says the criteria are stricter. And I think I said integrity criteria. You can check the tape. But, and then on third to the last paragraph, when Marion Thompson spoke, I think she referred to the Chautauqua Park Ridgewood district instead of the Old Town district. Got that? Okay, that's it. Okay, we need a motion to approve the minutes.
A motion with the changes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second with the changes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is our discussion on Chapter 31 update. Pardon me? Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. Public forum is number 4, and there's no members of the public present, so there's no comment. Do I need to read the statement?
I think you're fine since there's no one here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 5, Chapter 31 update discussion. Anybody want to start with anything? We didn't have a committee meeting. One reason I wanted to read over the minutes was to see what we had discussed last time. So there's no preparation. It's just throw out whatever. Do you want to go through it by section or by paragraph? What a subsection, I guess.
And Angie, didn't you have recommendations or thoughts you were going to? Okay, I just wanted to remember that the right way.
Yeah, so I had a few thoughts last time and questions just to look at it as if you were a person in Old Town. Does it make sense to you? Is there anything that you'd have questions on? Just exercising clarifications, I thought was the biggest thing. And I do have some comments when we get to particularly 31.10, I think, and a question on probably the next section where it talks about the certificate of appropriateness. Yeah, 3111.
Matt, did you want to say anything?
No, I just wanted to. I was trying to remember what you had asked last time.
I have to ask, did everybody go over it? I'm sorry, but it was your assignment. Okay.
And actually, we went over it, I know for a different purpose, but we actually went over this section quite thoroughly a while
Times
ago.
ago, yeah.
Yes.
With notes from staff that I actually put on.
Oh, okay. So that is from the previous discussion.
Those are not my notes for this this evening.
okay,
It was
okay.
the staff discussion that I
Mhm.
just,
Oh, you have a lot to say.
no.
That was from the, yeah, I
When
remember.
we went through it and I didn't
Yep.
want to have to go back and forth, so I just wrote them on
Okay.
here.
Well, why don't we start with section 31.10, 1 through 3 subsections. And it's any,
I guess I'll go ahead and get started. So one thing that came out of the discussion last time, I felt like, was a clarification that some of the minor additions that somebody might do to their lot, we talked about a chicken coop, for example, or some smaller structures, are not covered under this. They don't need a certificate of appropriateness. So I think one of my major items here was perhaps just clarifying that in the code, because when I read through it, particularly the first time when we were considering moving into the neighborhood, the first thing that hits you is that any act of reading from it, alteration, demolition, new construction, or relocation, it kind of sounds like anything whatsoever in your yard could potentially fall under that umbrella, which, as I understand, is not the intention there. So maybe just clarifying what's covered and what's not could be very beneficial to people understanding what it means to move into that neighborhood. So that's probably my main item on 3110 subparagraph 1.
As long as we're clarifying things, I just want to clarify. You said Old Town District, but this is for any potentially new district also, correct? Or only for Old Town?
Old Town is our only locally
Right.
designated.
As we get, if we were to get another one. would
Well,
this
right,
apply to that
it
also?
would apply to any.
So in our
new-
hypothetical think from that
Mhm.
mindset, I just
Right.
wanted to clarify that.
You're absolutely
So-
right. Yeah. Anybody that could become a new
Yeah.
locally designated historic district. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and specifically, you're talking section 3 or just 1?
Section 1 is what, subsection 1.
Okay.
Yeah. The details I'm flexible on.
Good.
It just right off the bat, the very first sentence hits you like everything is going to possibly be covered on the lot, which I didn't understand to be the intention there. So
Would it be enough to have a bullet point of further described below and then say which one is the one that describes it?
yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Because it is in 3, correct?
Well, it doesn't really say. So I think the 120 square feet number has come up for what is de minimis of that, what gets covered. I don't know where that shows up
It shows
necessarily.
up in the design guidelines.
Okay. Okay.
Under garages and accessory buildings,
Gotcha.
under new construction. It says accessory buildings that are 120 square feet or larger are required to meet design guidelines.
So when I read that, I took that to mean anything over 120 square feet must meet design guidelines, but that anything under 120 square feet would still need to get a certificate of appropriateness, but might not need to meet design guidelines
Mhm.
because it might be a little silly.
Yeah, it wouldn't need a certificate of appropriateness. yeah.
Right. So I think that's a clarification that would help my reading of it at least.
At least an internal reference.
I know Ray and I have had a discussion before about what requires a permit, if that triggers you having to get a certificate of appropriateness. But there are things that I had questioned, and I don't know that you were able to get an answer about. Like window replacement. Does that require a permit or not? If the opening's not altered. Obviously, we would want a certificate of appropriateness review. But if minor things like you're talking about, as long as there are things like window replacement that's not covered by permit, I think it does need to be clarified a little bit better and maybe the design guidelines is the place to put that, though. I don't know whether
as to whether a building permit is required or not.
Well, right, say a chicken coop, would that require a permit?
For windows, I'm not sure.
No,
Uh,
chicken
for
coop.
Chicken, well, if it's less than 120 square feet.
it would not.
would-
Yeah,
would not. No.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think there needs some clarification in whether it's actually in the code. I don't know whether I think if we're educating people, though, we need to educate them on the code because that's the law. And I think for us to be making decisions based on that law, I think we need to make sure that it can, that would hold legally. So I don't think if there's, I think that's an important area too of what requires a permit and what doesn't, and what's going to have certificate. Because in most places, it usually is triggered by a building permit.
Mhm.
So I don't know if window replacement doesn't require a permit, new siding require a permit. I mean, those are major alterations to a historic building.
I'm not sure if it requires.
So could we get the building
sure.
official to come to a meeting so we can ask those
Um,
things? Because I think that's something
Yeah,
we really
I can
need to
check.
know.
So what you're saying, 'cause the premise is this is triggered by a building permit and not everything is
Right.
coming through a permit
anything-
process. And so
Right.
how
Anything
else
that
would it be triggered?
right. But I don't think the building code's ever going to be changed. So if it's not required for things that affect historic resources, that is not structural, that the building official's not going to be concerned about. I don't know. I think there has to be something that makes it more legal that I don't know. I just see it as a major problem with this part.
So, Mary Jo, are you advocating adding a permit requirement for like windows and sidings?
No, because that's in the building code. No,
Okay.
we don't have any jurisdiction over the building code. But I'm saying that if there are if there are things that where it's not clear. I mean, I think you can't cover all the bases all the time, but as long as we know there's some issue, I think we need to see how we can fix it.
I think so.
Yeah.
And sorry,
I was gonna say, is this not answered in the next section, like subsection 2, where alteration of an exterior architectural feature? Depends on what that definition is, but that sounds like that would cover windows, siding, whatever else. Even
Well,
if it's a vague definition. I mean,
Right.
What's it-
No, because it,
and then
um,
number 3 is new construction. So number 2 is all of the existing something, whatever that is defined as. Sorry to read ahead.
yeah, no, that's fine. No, I said we were going to do 1 through 3. So, and anything that's related.
Because I agree, anything that's not triggered by the permit process should have some.
Other trigger.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I asked Ray last time, what is the consequence if somebody doesn't go along with this, and then what if they just change their windows?
Mhm.
But yeah, so there should be some.
Yeah,
Thank
and that could happen, and somebody could sue the city for making them change out the windows.
And then the onus should be on interpretation of this thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked previously. I got, if I understood correctly, anything that currently has a design guideline is essentially what the certificate of appropriateness might cover. Did I get that right? So it does talk about windows in the design guidelines. So therefore, windows would be covered.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
So,
yep, anything listed in the design guidelines.
okay. Which is one thing could be just to say it up front.
Mhm.
Anything that has a design guideline will be covered by certificate of appropriateness,
Mhm.
Parentheses, C-section,
Mhm.
whatever.
C-section, whatever. But
Yeah.
that gets us into a sticky wicket if down the road, big picture, we were talking about moving some of that to a visual guide and reducing the number of maybe differentiating between guidelines and criteria. What would be encouraged versus required? But for the way it is right now,
Yeah, I don't see that as a problem because I think you know,
You can still itemize the features. even if they're-
right, and you would, and you would make it clear what was a guideline and what was like if you were doing the design illustrated design guidelines. You could say what was required that's in the code, and then you could say what's recommended.
okay. And it
So
be
you could
as-
handle that way, just to give, where people can see alternatives, but then they would also know what's required in the
Mhm.
code.
Recommended by the commission.
Right, right.
Again, reading a little ahead, sorry. Number 4, I think it
Okay,
actually says it's tied to the design guidelines. So if you're
okay.
applying this, it's got consideration of the application for certificate appropriate shall apply to the design guidelines. Which is hard and I go back to your question, that's why I wanted to bring it up, is that when you read this from top to bottom, you don't tend to, you pick this is what applies to me and maybe not see the rest of it.
Mhm,
So to me, almost a reorder of some of these things might be helpful, but
mhm,
I tend to agree with that. Once you go through the whole thing, it kind of makes sense.
mhm.
But up front, I had the same reaction to it. Maybe being more explicit up front, saying this is what we're covering, could be helpful.
even like, hey, by the way, everything you're going to do to get the certificate of appropriateness has to go to the design guidelines. Here are the design guidelines. And then here's the certificate of appropriateness process. So then you're actually looking at the design guidelines, what affects,
Mhm.
which then tells you, okay, everything I just read applies to any of the rules I'm going to follow here. To me, that's how I would like to read it as the consumer of information,
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
knowing my boundaries and then say, okay, how does it apply to the rules?
And is that achieved as easily as just adding some references, like C section
You
X?
could, or you can move the section up.
Okay.
But I think it goes either way.
Yeah, yeah, because that would, number 4 actually applies to alteration and new
Yep.
construction. And so, yeah.
Which is,
Yeah,
here's
I
your
agree.
3
I
ways
mean, I
to do
think-
that. Then here's the rules you have to go by. And oh, by the way, the more rules are further down the
Yeah.
road, you'll get to them
Mhm.
eventually. Is basically how it reads.
The question I have with that, though, number 4, then and I haven't studied this enough to know, and maybe the staff can tell us, but if there's the guidelines that are under subsection 10, wait a minute. So there's no general design guidelines. They're all with the district and the landmarks. Is that correct?
For alterations, it's under 3113. Is that right?
Yeah, the design guidelines apply to
Okay.
structures in a district and landmarks. And then it's broken
Okay.
down further, design guidelines for alterations and design guidelines for new construction.
Okay, but then there's a section for the specific district, and it has further guidelines. Is that correct?
All the design criteria
Yes,
based on the architectural styles identified in the district.
right. So I guess, well, we're not working on that tonight. So, but I would have a question there of where there would be any conflict between which one would take precedence. If it would be the general or the specific district. Have you had any issues with that in the past?
I don't think there's any
Yeah.
conflict between the design guidelines and design criteria.
Yeah.
They're different. The way it's worded, right?
It's, the things you find in the design criteria are more specific, than in the design guidelines, but I don't think they necessarily conflict. It's based on the architectural style. Yeah.
Right.
Double hung windows for certain styles. For example,
Okay.
the dimension of the siding. In the design guidelines, it may say reference the material of the siding, but then in the design criteria, it goes on further and gives the dimensions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the guidelines are really more general then,
They are,
and then the criteria is more specific.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, we're not going to do that today.
I have
It's
an
too much.
observation. It seems to me this subsection 4 sticks out. Everything else, 2 through 7, is alteration, new construction, demolition, relocation. Number 4, I think, would make sense as a sub under number 1.
Mm-hmm.
And if we took the thing under number 1 that starts with furthermore, that could be sub A. Number 4 could be sub B.
Yeah.
So basically it's outlining the rules.
Mhm.
And then it says, and then here's the different types, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Okay, I have a question of staff. We're going through all of this and things like rearranging things. Is that going to be a problem for the legal department? Are they going to be, I mean, there's no point in us discussing what was going to work better if the legal department's going to say, we're not interested. So is there any chance that the legal department would support our suggestions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, they may have their own interpretation
Sure.
of how it should be organized or flow.
Right.
But I mean, they'll certainly consider what the commission is recommending.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, good.
And I don't think so far we're not asking them to change the meaning of it. It's more
Mhm.
just the flow of how it goes.
Right, that's
Yeah.
kind of what and just making sure that it is clear and ultimately legally defensible, I
Mhm.
guess is what.
Mhm.
Yeah. And to that,
And I would think the legal department would be very much in favor of that.
Mm.
Sure.
Yeah, and it sounded like coming out of what we're suggesting, like an itemized list up front of what this covers or what you need a certificate of appropriateness for, just really obvious up front might be a way towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even like you said, if the design guidelines and the design criteria can't be listed before as a sub-bullet 1, then it's referencing it
With
somewhere
reference,
else.
right,
And
right.
that would be okay too, as long as it
Yeah, if that were in the
shows where it is.
first statement, it applies to the criteria section.
Mhm.
That's a pretty easy fix,
Yep.
I think.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I assume that that's a recommendation will be.
I think that's something when we get this all
Sure.
figured out,
Yep.
that it'll be something. But I think what we'll probably do is just go through what we think needs to be commented on, and then the committee will make a list of changes and why.
Okay.
Why we're why we think they should be done, and then probably just give that to staff to handle with the legal department and.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
yes, we would take it to the legal department, yeah.
Would that I'm just going through the protocol. So if we make a list, does this group then have to say, yes, we all agree on the list and then it goes? Or is it, we just have this discussion, give you a list and then it goes?
I think
You would
both.
make your recommendation
Yep.
um,
Right.
to the city council.
Okay.
And we would put a report together as staff, and we would give our recommendation. And then the council would consider it, and then it would be passed on to the legal department to be put in the form of an ordinance.
Could we get an opinion from legal first before it goes to council? Or is that bypassing something?
I think it would be best to go to council first.
Okay.
Council has to direct the activity.
Hmm.
So sometimes people will request something of council and council just won't act on it and it just dies. Other times council will want more information, and then as they get more information, then they want to continue having it pursued. And it's their blessing for the process to continue. It doesn't mean they're adopting it. It means move ahead, pass go, collect $200.
Yeah. So really, it doesn't matter what legal has to say about it anyway before council does something. So my question about whether legal would support it depends on whether council supports it.
Right,
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
first you got to get through the city council.
Yeah. Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anything else from anyone on 1 through 4, I guess. I had a couple of minor things, and I appreciate some comment from the staff. Under 2A, it says a certificate of appropriateness shall be permitted if an architectural feature has deteriorated to the point that it must be replaced. I'm not, if staff somebody came in with a project to remove a deteriorated porch and okay, so then they would have to replace the porch.
Well, they would, they wouldn't have to replace the porch because of chapter 31. I mean, if they chose to replace the porch because they wanted to have a new porch, then it comes through the commission.
Oh,
They would only have to replace the porch if it's, identified as a safety concern by the building inspection department.
so in Old Town, someone who had a deteriorated porch, they could get an approval to tear it down and just not have anything else there. Is that correct?
Say that last part again.
Can they get it torn down and not have to have anything else there? Can they just remove a porch because it's deteriorated without replacing it?
That's a good question.
Okay, so I don't think we should be doing that.
Is your focus
That
on-
would be
Well-
removing an architectural feature.
Right, if it's contributing, it
I
would
would think
be
they,
problematic.
yeah. Yeah,
Are you questioning the word permitted? Because to me, I thought these meant that they were almost automatically granted without having to come before the commission.
That's what it means.
Okay.
Yeah, it means if,
So what do
if someone came in with
Right.
with a demolition to demolish their deteriorated porch, then staff would have to automatically issue a certificate of appropriateness.
But it says, and it is replaced in.
Yeah.
kind.
That it must be.
I added that.
Oh, I have it in the original. Okay. All right.
In your note, it's not written, it's not typed, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, mine's right there.
Replaced in kind.
Why is it not on this?
And it must be replaced.
An architectural feature has deteriorated to the point that must be replaced,
Yeah.
and it is replaced in kind,
Okay.
period, and it is part of the body.
But it's not in this one I have. It's
Yeah, this is the one you
replaced,
sent out
period.
today. Didn't have it.
Mine just says replace, period.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I added and it is replaced in kind, but if it's already in there, why is it not?
I don't know because
I think that was the
still
version
have-
that they edited and gave to us.
Oh, right. So I'll look at this.
Well, I didn't think any of this that we got was edited. I thought this was what's in the code.
So the one that she sent in the email this week is the one that's in the code. Version that we have in the past was one that you had edited and put notes in. That
Oh.
has,
But I thought the notes were. Oh, I
Let
see.
me see.
Yes.
Oh, right. That was, yeah, this is the edited that the committee did
Oh, right.
earlier. So yeah, I still think that needs to. I don't know. I don't understand why that can hold because I
think
just don't. I don't.
for me, I think it's what it's saying is it'll give it a certificate of appropriateness to an architectural structure feature that has been deteriorated and must be replaced. And if it's going to be replaced, it's got to go to the design guidelines and design
Mhm.
criteria. is
As
what
if it had come before the commission.
correct.
Placed.
So I think it's implying that what you're wanting is it to say it outright. And so to me, if you put the design criteria at the very top saying everything has to follow the design criteria and design guidelines for anything that follows here, this would be an alteration or a fix, an architectural feature that has been deteriorated to the point it must be replaced, assuming that it's being replaced by the design guidelines and the criteria.
Yeah.
Because those are down below it, it makes it confusing. And it does exactly what a homeowner would do.
Mhm.
And it says, well, do I have to replace it? Do I have to, what do I,
Mhm.
how do I
Yeah,
replace it?
Yeah.
And the reality is you have to replace it by number 4.
Yeah.
Am I interpreting that correctly?
well, if you replace,
If you replace it.
if you're wanting to make an alteration by removing the porch, anything you put back has to meet the design guidelines.
Correct. And you're saying it has to be replaced here, must be replaced
Mhm.
in A, 2A.
It says must be replaced. It doesn't say must be removed.
No?
That's a good point.
Yep.
It could say must be removed if it's deteriorated, but it says it must be replaced.
Okay, let's say there's a corbel on on the eave of a roof. Let's make it a little simpler. That, I don't know, you wouldn't necessarily require that be replaced, maybe if it were really decorative and it was really deteriorated and really expensive to replace.
The replacing in here in this line says that it must be replaced. That's decorative, and the necessity that it be replaced is not the same as the porch
Okay.
in my reading of it.
So what it's saying is if you're altering a feature by removing it because it's deteriorated, that the certificate of appropriateness has to be for how you're repairing, how you're replacing it.
I think the gist is that it's fast tracked. It's just an automatic because you're going to replace the thing that deteriorated.
Replace meaning that it does replicate.
Maybe that should say that it will be replaced then.
But it's describing how much it has deteriorated.
Right. But then, yeah.
If it's still functioning, it doesn't
So if
necessarily.
I'm a homeowner and I want to replace my porch because it's deteriorated so badly, what this is saying is that you will get a certificate of appropriateness automatically because you're doing this effort.
You don't have to waste your time. You can fix your porch.
Mhm.
So it's to the convenience. That's how I'm interpreting it.
Okay.
Is that how it was?
Well, you have to meet the design guidelines.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you will get it based on what this is saying.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm getting at, and not really
Yeah.
clear.
That's one of the
on-
reasons for approving an alteration.
Yes.
But if somebody has the option of removing a deteriorated porch and not replacing it, they can do that. Is that, that's something I can't, this
I don't think
sentence
it
to me
says
doesn't.
that.
Huh?
I don't think it says that.
Yeah.
It must be replaced.
Because what it's saying is that if you want a certificate of appropriateness to change that, you have to follow the guidelines and you have to replace it. But if your porch falls off the front of your house, you don't technically have to replace it unless it's a safety hazard by the city. Then the city comes in and says, yeah, you got to replace that porch. Then it's got to go through this process anyway.
Mhm.
But technically, if it's falling apart and you go out your back door and you never use it, and it's really not to the point that you're going to fall into a ditch, then you don't have to do
You can
anything.
take it off, right?
You just leave it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how I'm reading this.
That's how I read it, that it doesn't cover because I hate to keep dwelling on this. The it must be replaced is modifies deteriorated.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that a porch is going to be replaced. It has to be replaced.
But it also doesn't
Isn't-
say it's going to be removed. The whole line only matters if it's.
Doesn't must make it, isn't must the
That's what I think.
the
That's-
thrust there that must be replaced?
that to me it's
It's qualifying.
that it's deteriorated and it is going to be replaced or will be replaced. That's to me makes more sense. But to me that clarifies it. But
Well, obviously, there's something in the sentence that's not
Right.
clarified. And so I would say that we would ask that this sentence be modified
let's look at
for the
let's
intent.
let's look at it further. Yeah. Okay. Let's go away from that.
Well, because I mean, you're interpreting it two ways. One is interpreting that if there's deterioration that is so bad that it's come to a point that it now has to be replaced.
Yeah.
And then the other interpretation is that it's bad and you have to replace it.
Oh, right. Right.
And so
Right.
there's two different interpretations that we're
Mhm,
getting from the
exactly.
sentence. And I think it just needs to be written to the intent of what.
what it's supposed to
Oh,
be.
well
Yeah.
put. Well put.
If we look at it in concert with B and C, I think it clarifies itself. Or they clarify it.
Well, okay, we'll just look at that a little further. I mean, I think. Is that okay? Can we-
Yep.
Okay, I have one other thing on that, and under 3, that paragraph, a new principal structure. And I know this is kind of baked into the design criteria, but I really object to that a principal new structure has to represent one of the styles, because the Secretary of Interior standards, which are also in our code, do not advocate for that. They advocate for new construction. It should be kept compatible. It doesn't have to mimic a style. And to me, that just violates that standard. Yeah, I think that's something we need to think about, but I would just want to call your attention to it for now. I don't think we need to discuss it. But see what you think that statement means by looking at the design criteria, maybe, and the standard number 9, and see if you think that. To me, it just is counter to that standard number 9. So,
What's the rhyme or reason behind that standard? Just
well, it's to encourage not mimicking the past, and that you're giving a false sense of history. If you are building a new house that is, in the style, without it being, it can be, and it also discourages modern architecture, which can fit in too. It can be compatible. It's easier to mimic a style for an architect, for most architects, but the standards are, or that standard is specifically to ensure that a new construction is a period, that reflects its time that it was constructed. So that's the reasoning of that.
That's the difference between representative and, would you say, compatible?
Compatible. Mm-hmm. And you see really good examples of that and really bad. I've seen some really good modern additions that, really complement.
So the question that would follow to me are, what is the definition of compatible in the sense of what are the guidelines for those? And so if they meet the same design guidelines or design criteria, then I'm like, oh, all right. But if it's a whole different category of criteria that we'd have to develop, then I would think we'd have to evaluate that.
if it's not part of the original set of buildings in that district, would it even need to be part of that? As far as having guidelines and all that? Or is it just brand new and we just see
Well,
what happens?
Yeah. So if you're,
No, there are guidelines. The guidelines for compatibility are volume, materials.
So they do exist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if we'll ever run across that. It's pretty rare. It doesn't happen very often. But
Well, but then there might be a push to, have the granny cottage be more common to help people age in place and increase density. So it could be very relevant.
Yeah. Someone could build something that looks like a barn or something, and that would.
New carriage.
So yeah, it's an important standard. It's and it helps the idea of livability and everything. I think it does make sense. So anyway, I think that should be I think that's something we need to recommend a change on in the code. I think that is, it may not happen, but I think we need to try to get that clarified. Again, I think that's a legal thing. That's okay. Let's see. That's anybody have anything else? I wrote a note on here, but I'm not sure why. It's under demolition. Well, let me just read it. I don't know if there will be any discussion. Somewhere, I think for demolition, oh, I know, it says 5, demolition. Demolition of existing principal structures that are contributing structures or of a historic landmark shall be strictly prohibited except in the following instances. And I didn't see anywhere that said that deterioration, a reason for,
Feature of has deterioration to the point of
so yeah, it's prohibited except if deterioration has caused the structure to be non-contributing or it has reached a level of deterioration. The level of deterioration has caused the structure to be economically infeasible to repair. I didn't see anything that would cover that under demolition. So I don't know.
For structural stability, you mean? What about under 5 sub B? It talks about you can prove economic hardship, ...
Right.
with the attestation of an engineer architect as to the structural soundness of the structures and their suitability for rehabilitation.
Ye- Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that. Yeah. Okay. I see. I think that takes care of it. It just doesn't state it in the first sentence. Which I think it would be helpful if it did, but that's what you're doing by applying those requirements to be submitted to prove that. Anyway,
The rest of those in that list, A through L, are all about hardship. What if it's simply structural?
well, okay, that's where I think that's where I had the problem with it. Just
Or is that like replacing a porch? You just replace the.
no, I think that's a different situation, but I do think that, yeah, it is more economic, the economic feasibility.
I was going to say, I think it just kind of comes down to, is it cost too much to do it for the property value?
Hmm.
And if
Yeah.
it is, then you don't have to do it. So I think it all falls under that hardship. We might define hardship differently.
Yeah.
I think now.
Okay.
Because when you get under the garages, it really does give specific bowing and different walls, and,
Yeah, I know.
which I think is what you're kind of looking for in that area. But
It is, and that's what I've been a little bit curious about why are so much instructions about the condition of a garage and not a structure,
Really?
a house.
one time the garages were really important.
So,
Not that they're not now, just a lot of detail.
anyway, if you, well, we'll make notes. Maybe when the minutes come out for the next, look at that a little closer, maybe, if you would, and see what you think about that. If that's clear enough, or if that's legally covers us. Okay. I don't have anything then about the garage or anything that's in there, and it seems weird to me that it doesn't apply to primary structures, but okay. Anything else on subsection 10? Let's go to 11.
I have a question on 5.
Number 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm curious from the city's point of view. Historically, have you had anybody that has not been able to do their project or finish it within a year and have to come back for their?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have.
And do you know the historic reason of a year? I'm just thinking of a big project in a house, obviously is going to be more than a year. And so is there exceptions that are given, or it's just you want, the city has wanted them to come back every year to renew it?
It doesn't give us the authority to grant exceptions.
Okay.
So if it's been more than a year, they have to reapply.
And so
And it
And
is,
ask for an extension.
yeah,
I would assume it's good for another
think
year
we've
if they
given
reapply.
it then.
yeah, we have approved those. But when you said extension, I'm thinking what we've had them approve, the commission in the past is a new application.
It says a planning director can approve an additional 1 year. Though, so they could
Under
do,
number 5
it could be 2.
Oh, dude.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
When nothing's changed.
If it's something that yeah, you're right. If it's something that the planning director approved an alteration, then the planning director can extend that for another year. But if it's something the commission approved, it has to come back to the commission for approval again.
Okay.
We've had that happen with porches in the past.
So the planning director cannot extend. Well, then,
If it's something that planning director approved
then,
in the first place,
okay.
The administrative approvals that can
Yeah.
be done by staff. That's
Which
what
are-
he's speaking of.
which are alterations. But if it's new construction, which would be, if they demolished an existing porch, built a new porch, that'd be new construction. And the commission had to approve that. It has to come back to the commission again.
So the extension has to come to the commission.
Yeah.
The request for the extension.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And the reason for that is, a year later, regulations may have changed.
Mhm.
They usually haven't with Chapter 31 in a year, but it does happen. It happens in zoning. So, for example, we have site plans that are approved, and if they, I think for site plans, it's a 2-year period. They have to come back and get a new site plan approved. And regulations may have changed, say on setbacks or off-street parking or landscaping.
Mhm.
I just asked the question just to know if this is common, they would have to come back, if it was long enough or too long. And anyway, and you answered all those questions.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ray, I have a question. On the application for certificate of appropriateness, one of the information pieces that's required is as I understand it, the site plan to show what the project is, where it's on your lot. And I think that requires exhibit developed by a surveyor, which is kind of a non-trivial expense. Can you talk a little bit about where that comes from and where that applies? Like that piece of it is, if we're going to replace a porch, for example, in the same footprint or the garage in the same footprint, why is that piece needed?
It doesn't require it be done by a licensed professional for a certificate of appropriateness. It does for a site plan.
Site.
So if you're preparing a site plan, say for a new apartment building, a new commercial office building, that has to be prepared by a surveyor, an architect, a landscape architect, or an engineer.
Okay, so for just replacing pieces of a structure like a porch or something in kind, that's not required of it?
It's not required
Okay.
that it be prepared by a licensed professional.
Okay.
But, I mean, it still needs to be accurate, to make sure you're the correct setback distance from the property line, that type of thing.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. That answers it.
Yep.
It's really, I'm pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm not real clear on what's reviewed by staff and what comes to the commission. Is that clear to everybody else here?
Administrative approval.
Yeah,
Where is that?
there's administrative approvals. Let me see just where that is.
Is that in regards to number 5 or just in general?
No, that's it in
Yeah,
general.
administrative approval process, section 31, 11,
Mhm.
right below that title, number 1, administrative approval process.
Right.
So if it is an alteration or if it's new construction of a fence or retaining wall, then it may be approved by the planning and housing director, or the director may decide to refer it to the Historic Preservation Commission for approval. But if it is something that's not an alteration and it increases the floor area of the building, or there's new construction other than a fence or a retaining wall, then it has to come to the commission.
So say an addition on a principal structure
That has to come to the commission.
would come to the commission, even
Yes.
no matter what. the-
Right. Yeah, we don't have the authority of staff to approve that.
And this, I think we were saying earlier, would make sense to be outlined at the beginning of 31.10, way up on top. Because where I talked about that feature being
Yeah.
the certificate of appropriateness being permitted, all it's saying is permitted by staff instead of us.
Well, yeah, so really not very much comes to the commission unless there's if say someone wanted to build a deck on the rear. Is that new construction?
I'm sorry, if they wanted
If
to,
someone wanted to build a deck on the back of their house that would be attached to the house.
that would be an alteration.
Okay, not
Because
an
it
addition.
doesn't add to the floor area. I mean,
Okay, addition
on
is
the
just adding to the floor area.
Mhm.
Okay, so
But
Is-
if it's a porch, you know, you're, say it's a new front porch with the roof, so forth, then that's considered new construction.
mhm,
Or a chicken coop that's bigger than 150 square feet.
120 square feet.
120.
Number.
Couldn't remember the number.
so do you, have you had a case there like that where somebody wanted to build like a deck on,
We usually bring the decks to the commission,
okay,
you know, unless they're just a deck with no, you know, balustrade and,
oh, just like a platform?
yeah,
Mm-hmm,
yeah, we usually
Okay.
bring those to the commission.
okay. Okay, you've never had any issues with someone arguing with you about something, or do you just refer it to the commission if somebody wants
We would
say,
refer it to the commission.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, okay. Alrighty. So, anything else? So I have a note on here for, let me see. What is the procedure now if somebody comes in with a application for a certificate of appropriateness and they have all their materials ready to go? Is there a time limit on when that is submitted to the commission? Or I know you would get it processed, but is that something that I'm wondering if that's something that should be in the code that specifies if you had I've had experience with this, believe me, where a staff person put things off and put it off and didn't
Yeah.
submit it like it should have been. And I'm wondering if there should be something in the code that has a time limit for a certificate of appropriateness to get on the agenda.
It depends on how complex it is, but we usually like to have it 2 weeks before the meeting so that it gives us time to review their application, get any changes made,
Yeah,
write our report and get that out. 2 weeks is about as
okay.
fast as we can do it because almost always, you know, there's something that needs to be added or changed
Right.
before it goes out to the.
So it's an administrative procedure
Yeah.
then. So,
Yes.
yeah, I'm just wondering if there needs to be anything in the code on that. I don't know if that's something you might want to,
We have those procedures for all the different kinds of applications and it's not in the code, you know, it's how we manage the workload and
well, and you obviously have to have all the information before you can
yes, yeah,
schedule
we have
it
to,
too.
yeah,
So,
we determine that the application's complete
okay,
and you know, on most applications, that's, you know, within the first 3 days. We oftentimes get back to them sooner than that. And then once they submit revisions, depending again on what type of application it is, we may have 7 days to get back to them. You know, in some cases, there's multiple departments that have to look at it
Mhm.
before we can get back to them.
And so the commission meets on a monthly basis cadence unless we decide there's no business there. But this would be business. And I think in here you do have a 30-day interpretation of approval within and if it doesn't, it has to go to the commission. And that's in, if I'm reading it correctly,
Mhm.
1C.
For administrative approvals, we try to get that done within a week.
And this says you have, if it's not done in 30 days, it has to go to the commission for approval.
Oh,
And so
Mhm.
to me, that's the deadline really that we're working with.
Yeah. Also a comment on that. So the process and the calendar is published online on the HPC website. So I found that to be really helpful.
Okay,
It's nice.
There's a lot of transparency there about these are the steps you're going to go through and what to expect.
Yeah. Okay,
So that's out there.
okay, okay. Yeah, I hope this is informative. I mean, I appreciate the staff
Yeah.
explaining and everything. And I mean, I've done it before, but it's done a little differently every place. So, anyway, I don't know whether that's something that, you know, the staff you'd want to, if that would be anything that would be needs to be more specific. I don't know, but just that's something I had a note on. Okay, then if that's all for section 12 or 11, sorry. 12 is the Secretary of Interior Standards. Those are just, they're written like they are in the federal guidelines. So I think that's it for that discussion then. Unless anybody has anything else.
I have one I missed earlier on.
Okay.
And this, I apologize, this goes back to the very beginning, but the applicability of the certificate of appropriateness. When I read this, I think it talks a lot about any alterations, new constructions to a contributing structure or a lot with a contributing structure. Now, apologies if I don't really understand this very well, but within a historic district, are there some properties specifically that get listed as contributing structures and then some that are not but are within the geographic bounds? How are those non-contributing structures dealt with as it applies to chapter 31?
They do not have to get a certificate of appropriateness.
Ah, okay. Okay. Interesting. I was not aware of that.
So actually, in the new district, didn't Marion report that there were just 3 properties that could become registered? Or is that slightly different from what?
That's a little different. There
Yeah.
were 3
Mhm.
properties that could stand on their own to be
Oh, yes, that's
nominated
different.
individually.
Yeah.
Because of their integrity.
Yeah.
All, the district many of the houses would not be able to stand on their own, but as a combined effort, a compilation of homes representing
Yeah.
the area, then
They're
they're contributing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's pretty typical everywhere. Non-contributing properties just aren't reviewed, period.
Oh, it's interesting because I think that frames it differently in my mind as far as these requirements apply to the whole neighborhood or they just apply to specific buildings that
Mhm.
are contributing structures.
Those old apartment buildings, you know, they built in 60s and 70s. So
Mhm.
Does that need to be clear? Because if you missed it and you've really studied these, I wonder if it's an omission. The exclusion.
It might help clarify things and, you know, to that aspect, maybe pointing to where is the list of properties.
It's a map.
Mhm.
The map is on the web page for Old Town. It shows contributing, it shows non-contributing, and it shows new. So if it's a new, and then there's a map for properties, and then a map for garages. So like the one, there was I don't remember the address, but where they had torn down their garage and put in a new garage. This is in my mind because I just amended the map and put the amended map on the web page. So it now shows that garage location as new and not as contributing.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, to have that
So
information out there.
it is something that's good to keep up with. It doesn't happen a lot where something gets changed dramatically, and so it's easy to not pay attention to updating the map. But yeah, from time to time, it's good to go back and see if there's any updates needed.
So when somebody's buying a house, I know last time I asked about realtors, so, but if somebody's buying a house, and I mean, I'll ask you, is it pretty standard that you would think, oh, I need to go look and see if this property is contributing? Is that how it goes?
No, I mean, it was fairly evident to us about you're going to be in the overlay, look at chapter 31. But when it comes time to talk about contributing structures and non-contributing structures, as like a layperson, I feel like that's kind of a term of art that I would not have understood several years ago.
But the reality is you knew that because you lived in that area, you would have to come and get approval.
Yeah, I
And
just
so-
assumed the whole neighborhood was
And if
covered. Yeah.
you're a home that's not one of those, you'd come in and say, oh, do I got to do this? And they would say, oh, no, you don't have to. do it."
Right.
That's what would happen in that process, I'm assuming.
It's easier to have everybody think that they have to get a COA
Yep.
because they're the majority.
Yep.
And the ones that don't, it's better to surprise them and say you don't have to than to have it be the reverse where 80% of the people are surprised that they do have to. Or 99% or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't think there's any place in the code that it's not, that it can be confused either, though. So, but I think probably when, like when you have a new district too, it's probably a good idea to kind of explain that difference. And I don't remember if the presentation in the Chautauqua Park,
We did not
Ridgewood.
publicize the
That
map
might-
of
that-
contributing and non-contributing
Yeah, that might
that
be.
meeting because it was to give more information
Right,
and not to
right.
go down that rabbit hole just yet.
Right. I'm thinking maybe at the next, if we have a meeting, if that's on the work plan with that neighborhood too, to kind of, go over that a little too, to clarify that would be useful. Okay, are we done with that? Okay, let's move on to the work plan, item number 6. And I think staff sent a draft. Any comments?
I wondered where the draft came from. Who did the draft?
So what happened is Susan put together notes from the last meeting after listening to the minutes and sent them to us. And we had our notes as well. And so I put together the draft and put it into the format that we've used in the past, where we also mention which goal or objective it would cover under the Ames Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan, because that's supposed to be our guide for proceeding with activities. So the reason it's got the strikeout text and the underlined text is so that to be transparent and to make sure this, as it goes forward, is what you want.
Yeah.
So the draft may not represent what you thought was where you were going, and maybe I misunderstood.
Yes.
So the intent is tonight to clarify what your work plan is. And so if there's something that's misrepresented or that you don't agree with or whatever, please, let's get that clarified.
That wasn't a critical question. I was
No.
just interested. It suddenly came back much more defined than we left it last month. So it was like,
Right.
who did the work? So,
Right. And so this is the way we've submitted it to the state last year
uh-huh.
and also to the city council. So that's why it's put back into that format. It gives better substantiation to your efforts if it references these sections of the Ames Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan. So maybe we should just start at the top under educate and just see if anybody has any comments on the first bullet.
I did, and I don't know what you think about this, Edie. Where it says collaborate with the Ames History Museum, and we've struck out Iowa State. I wondered, or if this is maybe being too specific, if we want to say, and with downtown Ames.
Or the Ames Chamber of Commerce.
Or with the same umbrella, yeah.
They're really, in my opinion, representing like the business community, not so much history or historic preservation. So
Okay.
I'm fine with leaving them out. somehow.
So what was your recommendation? I'm sorry, I didn't quite
To,
To still leave it as it is.
leave it as it is. Okay.
I was thinking.
Sometimes, I'm sorry, sometimes it's really hard for us to hear you,
I know.
and I don't know why the mics don't seem to
Oh, well, I'm sitting.
come to
yard
this
back.
point. I think they speak back further.
So depending on where you two are at with that, should we put seek collaboration? Because you're now collaborating.
we
or
are.
you are. Okay, good. Okay. I didn't know that.
Get an update here on number.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I on bullet 2, if we're there. I think that what we talked about was having a meeting, holding a meeting or meetings, and to pursue either National Register or local landmark district overlay designation to present the options to the neighborhood to see, so that they understand what the differences are, and give them more guidance on what needs to be done and what their role would be for either one. I know I had mentioned that the National Register designation, which we could get funding for probably, would require a consultant. And it wouldn't require the upfront owner consent. But the National Register designation is honorary. There's no protection. And I think the neighborhood residents need to be provided with the information on both, whether if they want protection for their district, then the way to go is the overlay. And it doesn't matter if one precedes the other. It's not, they're not dependent on, one's not dependent on the other. So I think that presenting that to the neighborhood to let them know what's required of them or what their participation level would be or not be, all that is, I think, a good idea to just lay out all the options for them so they understand what they're getting and see what their objectives are. Because the city's done the survey, which is a good basis of information, but what follows that, I think, it's really important to present both options. So I would like that to be added too, and if everyone else agrees that.
So we did talk a little bit at the neighborhood meeting about the differences between a national nomination and a local district. Of course, there was a lot discussed too.
Mhm.
So-
Yeah, I think it was mentioned, but there really was not information on it.
And then we did ask them to do that poll of if they would be interested in pursuing a national nomination.
Right.
But what the main thing I think that the main missing piece I think at this point is that the neighborhood knows that this occurred without anything that they didn't have any part in having the intensive level survey completed.
Mhm.
And so I don't think they understand what their role is, like you were just saying.
Mhm.
And actually, they would need to play a significant role, and for the council to want to have it move forward. And I think there's a disconnect there that they don't know that.
Mhm. Right,
We
right.
haven't really told them, hey, it's in your court. You need to show interest in.
Well, but I think but for them to just, to get some consensus in the neighborhood of what they really want from that, if with the information that the city has provided them, do they just want to be able to celebrate that, or do they want some protection? And if they want protection, the way to go is for an overlay district. So, if they, and they may not want that, but I think they need the opportunity to have a good information session on what one does, what you do to get there, what happens when you have the designation, and so I don't think we could get state funding if the neighborhood decided they wanted to do a local overlay. I don't think we could get funding for that, which I know we could get funding for the National Register District. So that's something to consider too. Whether the staff and the commission's not going to, or it has to be the neighborhood that pursues the overlay, not the staff or the commission, whereas the staff and the commission can pursue the National Register designation. So
So I'm assuming that you would like then a training session for the community, an informational session for the community, for them to determine what they want to pursue, and then we work with them on that activity. That
yeah, that's what.
Yep.
That's the way I think we should proceed. We could apply for a grant. The commission could, or staff could apply for a grant to do a National Register nomination without asking them that if the council approved that grant application, we could do it that way.
what I'm assuming is the council probably doesn't want to pursue anything unless the community is part of that conversation.
That's
So
what I,
the informational session at first, and then the determination of what we can help them with or what they don't need help with and they want to pursue it themselves.
okay. Is
Okay,
that okay?
I think so.
Okay. But I think that should be in the plan that include the landmark district overlay. I have one other under bullet 3. It says reach out to Old Town Historic District property owners. I think we should just provide them information. Somehow provide them information rather than say reach out. How we need to say how we're going to reach out, I guess.
Just say provide property.
Provide them educational materials on the tax credits. I think that's what that was all about when we had the discussion. rather than preserving and improving. I think we were
Wasn't-
specifically talking about applying the tax credits.
Tax credits is down under economic development. I thought this one was about the pictures for the what you call it in chapter 31, the design guidelines and whatnot.
Yeah, I thought it was just more general than
Oh.
that.
Oh,
Just
okay.
Reaching out with more educational things on a regular basis and
Saying this is
utilizing
what
the
this community
neighborhood
means,
newsletter.
This is
Yeah.
what it is.
I had written down
Yeah.
a trifold brochure potentially
Yeah.
for realtors.
That would be more specific if we could accomplish that. Then,
Because, like I said, I think the tax credit stuff is under the next section.
mhm.
I think is the assumption that you're putting reach out as a generalization to allow us the determination of how we want to do that over the year, or do we need to be much more specific in these plans to say exactly what we're doing?
I think you should be general enough to give yourself some wiggle room, but specific enough to also know what it is you're trying to do.
Correct.
Sometimes general statements are so general that they don't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's hard to like do a checklist and check off that you've done them because you never knew what it was that you were supposed to do.
Okay. Okay. Right. That one was more for what we've been talking about in chapter 31, I guess. And
So is the consensus to leave that one as it is, or did you want some of it changed?
I'm
well,
good, personally. But
I say leave it. I think it's good enough.
okay.
Okay.
So we don't want to refer to illustrated guidelines or anything like that. We don't want
I think
To be
that
more
we can do
specific.
that. I think we can do that if we want to. But as the year goes on, if we don't have the, let's say we don't have the budget to do it, or we don't have the timeline to do that, this gives us the flexibility to
Yeah.
be more general about what we want to provide.
Okay. Angie, you had mentioned the going through the neighborhood association with information.
Mhm.
Is that seems to me like that would not require time or that much time or money, that we could be more specific with that as an item to accomplish, is it, to inform Old Town property owners about preservation information.
So, okay, I'm losing track of the thread here of what we're.
I mean,
trying to
I
suggest.
think it's okay to be general, but I think we want, to me, what we talked about was giving them specific information on the history of their property and that sort of thing. And you talked about doing it through the newsletter
Right.
that's existing. So that's what that item to me was about. So,
So the first article has been submitted to the December newsletter, and that focuses on tax credit opportunities.
okay.
So I was thinking that was just an open slot for us to put something in the newsletter each time.
Mhm, mhm.
Maybe it's specific towards styles, maybe it's specific towards rehabilitation or whatever
Okay.
suits us.
So since we're doing that, don't we want to put that as a specific item because of that bullet point is specifically for the Old Town Historic District.
I think there
And
could
if
be-
that's what we're doing,
and
Are
I-
you
and I
the
think we're-
columnist then?
I don't see the need to be more specific.
okay. All right. Okay. All righty. Okay. Eloise, I think we're going to leave it the way it is.
that particular bullet.
Mhm.
I got it.
Okay.
Anything else under education?
There's just a typo I see. Participate in educational opportunities afforded by the 2023 Preserve School Summit. Yeah.
By the?
Yeah.
That was on the old one too.
Okay. But is everybody just reading it, or
I think it looks good.
so?
I think it captured a lot of what we talked about last time.
The overall plan or that
The
section?
overall plan.
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
I agree.
We discussed getting another speaker for Ted. Didn't he organize the one?
There was one I was researching. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility. So I don't know if that would be something I'd put into the plan, but it doesn't mean that. I mean, if we come up with something we want to add later, that this is not. That's what
Right.
Mhm.
I haven't got a response. That's what I'm.
Okay.
So I don't want to commit us to something that might not happen.
Okay.
I don't remember, we don't do a half-year adjustment or anything with the
Mm-mm.
state.
We haven't in the past.
No, I just was wondering.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if we should maybe get somebody from OHP to come. They'd have a preservation architect. If you're, if the one that you were talking about
Sure.
doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that can completely happen. There was a stipend that we needed to do that for last time.
mhm.
Is this my only thought was that we would put it into the plan if we wanted to get the stipend. Does it have to be in the plan, or can we ask for a stipend mid-year, even though it wasn't in the plan?
There's a budget that you have that's $2,000.
Mhm.
That's for education to go to conferences and also for other things like mailings or
Yep.
stipends for speakers. So there's no defined way it has to be spent.
Mhm.
Like exactly. I mean, there is some flexibility, in other words.
I would be good either way. It could be in the plan or not in the plan.
Mm.
If you feel like you have contacts to get the speaker, if it was all depending on the one I had, I didn't want to
Yeah,
put it in there.
okay.
But if,
Okay.
if you have others, that'd be great.
Well, I think we should keep it in and try to get something in that.
Everybody else feel about
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
So are you changing the bullet under economic development, or you
no, I think we will keep it.
keep it as it is?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
But keep it as you have it or keep it how it used to be?
Keep it as it is.
Mhm.
Okay.
But this draft.
Okay.
So, okay. Is that it, Eloise? I think everything looks good on here. It looks doable.
We're kind of hoping that we might be able to do the CLG grant report for the next meeting. And if that's the case, then this would come back as an attachment with that. So then if there are any more tweaks, it could be done before we send it to the state or give it to the city council. So hopefully that'll be the plan.
Thank you for putting it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to community education topics, and I think that's where.
And let me
Yeah.
say before Edie starts that Edie has done all the progress and advancement this month, so she certainly gets to present and take a round of a something.
Yeah, I finally just started to reach out to people, just trying to decide who should we reach out to first. And tomorrow, Rosemary and I are meeting tomorrow with Crystal Davis from the Chamber and Cassie Vance from the Ames History Museum, both of whom think this is a great idea. So we're just going to start, I think, tomorrow, brainstorming and kind of like explaining what my vision is for what it should look like. And then we'll just start brainstorming from there who else we need to bring into it. So,
Right.
It's exciting.
I've talked to several non-history people who go, oh yeah, I'd go with that. Yeah, I'd go with that. That sounds like fun. So,
Do we need a vote on the plan? Sorry, going back. Do we need a vote to approve it?
It would be good to have a vote.
Okay, let's go back to item 6. Sorry.
Right.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve the work plan for 2023?
I move that we approve it as printed or as whatever, with adjusted with her.
I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay. Who approves?
Hi.
Aye.
I'll approve, okay. Okay. Then, did either of you have any more comments on that? So we'll be looking forward to more information on that.
Edie has such a strong view of this. It's really reassuring. She's really
Good.
got a vision.
Great.
So I'm off to Hawaii.
You're- Okay. Okay, item 8, commission comments.
None for me.
Okay. Number 9, staff comments.
Number of things on the agenda for next time. We usually get from the state the CLG annual report form for us to fill out about this time each year. So we're hoping that arrives soon so that we'd like to bring it to the commission in January with the work plan. The awards program, first step in the awards program. Talk about that in January. And then just today, we received a National Register nomination from the State Historic Preservation Office for a building in Campustown at 103 Stanton, the Cranford apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
And so the commission will determine if you believe the National Register criteria are met by this nomination.
Oh, right.
And then after that, we'll go to the mayor and council and back to the state nominations review committee. And they meet in February.
Great.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. Anything?
When do the awards when are they given out?
In May.
May. When is your?
Well,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
it's the last meeting in April by city council.
So the schedule is we take it to you in January to have you endorse how moving forward. And then the submittals are required by the end of February. And then in March, you review the submittals and make your determination. And then at the end of April, usually is when the awards are presented by the mayor and city council at the same time that they do a proclamation for May to be National Preservation Month.
And that's the same month that you're planning your event?
We're gonna do the event in May, yes, for
Okay.
that. But yeah, they always present the awards in April, so we can get publicity.
Yeah.
For May, so
Oh, right.
that's why it's all.
Yeah, I just thought it was a nice coordination to kind
Well,
of,
that's why we wanted to do it in May in
Yeah.
conjunction with, because it's gonna do that. It's gonna give us publicity, and it's gonna celebrate the fact that downtown got put on the National Register. So we're hitting
all
We're
kinds of
hitting them
things.
all out of the park. All at once.
Great.
Okay. Somebody want to move to adjourn the meeting? If we're done?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All approve?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.